When a person first encounters injustice, real, raw, unmasked by words or laws, a pain awakens within them. This is not the pain of a physical wound. It is a wound along an inner axis. You realize that the world you were told about in childhood does not exist. The rules you followed do not guarantee safety. The laws you believed in will not necessarily protect you. Good does not always triumph. Honesty is not always rewarded. Integrity does not always earn respect. And so, instinctively, you seek explanations. Your soul clings to old supports, hoping this is an exception. Perhaps the fault lies with a person, not the system. Perhaps the world is still just, and this is merely a glitch. But the longer you live, the clearer it becomes. What you thought was an exception is the rule. What you took for a glitch is the algorithm. Justice is a fairy tale adults tell themselves to avoid going mad. Look around. Who is rewarded? Who rises to the top? The honest? Or the cunning? Who wins? The one who forgives? Or the one who controls? The world does not value purity of heart. It values precision of calculation. People do not follow truth, they follow power. And history, if you read it closely, does not tell of the triumph of virtue. It tells of how those who survived understood that truth is a tool, not a goal. This is why Machiavelli remains relevant in every era. He was not a cynic, he was a surgeon. He did not reject morality. He simply did not trust it as a method of governance. He saw humans as complex, often cruel, but predictable creatures driven by desire, fear, envy, and gain. And he understood, if you want to survive in this world, you must see it not as you wish it to be, but as it is. This is where the first, fundamental idea begins. You cannot live in a world without justice while expecting justice from the world. As long as you hope someone will come to fix everything, as long as you believe honesty alone is a strategy, as long as you live in an illusion, Machiavelli teaches, if you want to stop suffering, start seeing. If you want to live, accept that there is no justice, only interests. But what truly destroys a person in an unjust world is not the injustice itself. One can grow accustomed to it. Far more dangerous is the false hope that you still live in a world of truth. That others' words mean what they say. That smiles are sincere. That promises are made with intent to keep. That oaths are contracts, not temporary conveniences. Here lies the second trap. You don't just suffer from injustice, you become a victim of hypocrisy. People don't admit they lie. They cloak themselves in talk of values, humanism, justice, spirituality. But listen closely, and you'll see it's a theater of morality, not its essence. It's a game where virtue is a mask hiding interest. The louder the talk of goodness, the more it serves as a smokescreen for control, manipulation, and fear. Machiavelli was not against truth, he was against naivety. He saw that people far more often believe what they want to hear than what is real. That's why, in politics, business, and relationships, the winner is not the truthful but the one who can manage the perception of truth. People don't probe for depth, they look at the surface. They don't seek truth, they follow an image. So Machiavelli teaches, don't be swayed by others' words. Don't confuse form with substance. And most importantly, learn to hear not what a person says, but why they say it. This knowledge is your armor. People will promise you justice, but mean only the justice that benefits them. They'll speak of honesty as long as it's safe. They'll praise compassion as long as it earns them points. But when the moment of choice comes, interest triumphs over principles. To avoid being deceived in this theater of truth, you must step back, stop listening with your ears, and start seeing with your eyes. Who benefits from this phrase? Who profits from this morality? What lies behind this action? Only by asking these questions do you step out of illusion and into reality. You stop being a spectator and become an analyst. And from analysis to action is just one step. This step leads to the next inevitable thought. If you see the world not as a fair duel but as a chessboard where pieces move not by justice but by strategy, you face a choice: to be a pawn moved by others or to become a player. Being a pawn is easy. Others decide for you. They move you where it suits them. They use you as a resource, a tool, a bargaining chip. A pawn can hope and die with hope. A pawn can wait and be forgotten. A pawn can proclaim its righteousness and be swept off the board. But a player? A player doesn't hope, they calculate. They don't complain, they build. They don't react, they act. A world without justice demands maturity. You cannot afford to be emotionally naive. You cannot afford to be offended when manipulated. It's like blaming rain for being wet. Machiavelli saw that those who complain about the world are not ready to govern it. Those who hope for order will be crushed by chaos. A player is one who understands. If the rules don't work, you create your own, not against the rules, but above them. Not through protest, but through subtle strategy. This doesn't necessarily require cruelty. Machiavelli didn't advocate brutality. He advocated understanding. Power belongs not to the loudest shouter, but to the one who moves quietly yet knows what they're doing. To be that person, you must not just observe, you must engage. Not just decipher others' moves, you must make your own. Not just defend, you must attack. Not out of malice, but because passivity is slow death. The world doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who seize, not necessarily with force, but always with initiative. Not with shouting, but always with influence. Machiavelli writes, "A wise person cannot and should not remain loyal if it harms their interests, or if the reason for that loyalty no longer exists." This isn't about betrayal, it's about flexibility. In a world without justice, those who adapt survive, not those who cling to ideals. But for the game to succeed, it's not enough to act. You must act in a way that makes others believe you're following the rules. In a world where everyone expects an outward saint, you can seize power by learning to appear as one. The most sophisticated form of power in an unjust world is power cloaked in virtue. People crave belief in justice, even when it's absent. They don't want to live in reality. They want to live in an image. And the one who masters creating that image becomes not just a player, but the author of the entire board. Machiavelli understood human nature to its core. He knew people judge not by essence but by appearance, not by actions but by the story attached to them. You can commit the harshest, even immoral acts, but if you wrap them in nobility, people will swallow it without disgust. Because it's easier for them to believe you're good than to admit you're strong. This is the key to survival. In an unjust world, you cannot afford to be truly good in the sense of naive self-sacrifice. That leads to ruin. But you also don't need to be an overt predator. Machiavelli didn't advise being a beast. He advised being a fox in a lamb's skin. Be cunning. Be calculated. Be merciful when it serves you. Be harsh when it benefits you. But always appear virtuous. One must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves, he wrote. That's the strategy. No one fears the good, but all respect the strong if they hide their claws until the right moment. Justice as a concept is devalued, but the image of justice still sells. People keep seeking a hero, a shepherd, a leader, anything to avoid facing chaos. Become that image. Don't believe in it, use it. Your morality is your flexibility. Your ethics are your influence. Let them see you as a symbol of light while you move in the shadows, making the moves the situation demands. This brings us to a new facet of survival. If you wear a mask, you must know who you're wearing it for. To control others' perceptions, you must understand those you seek to influence. And so we arrive at the next thought. Wearing a mask is pointless if you don't understand who's looking at it. To govern people, you must know their nature, not as motivational books teach, not as songs about goodness proclaim, but as Machiavelli knew it, without illusions, without hopes, without self-deception. He tore away the romantic veil from human nature and saw what others tried to ignore. People are weak. People are fickle. People are envious. They may admire you today and despise you tomorrow. They may kiss your hand in your strength and kick your face in your fall. They follow you not because you're great, but because you're useful now. Because you're on top now. Because you have something they don't. But let them sense you're vulnerable, uncertain, or weak, and they'll bare their teeth. Machiavelli didn't blame people for this. He accepted it as fact. And he taught, if you want to avoid falling, don't rely on gratitude, don't build strategies on loyalty. Don't count on the crowd as your support. The crowd is like the wind. Today it's with you, tomorrow it's with the one who shouts louder. Today it claps, tomorrow it throws stones. But precisely because human nature is such, you can use it. People want to believe, give them a reason. People fear chaos, offer them order, your order. People can't think critically, be the one to give them a ready-made meaning. Disdain them silently, govern them softly, inspire them artfully. But never, ever be swayed by their approval. That approval isn't yours. It belongs to the circumstances that put you on top. Machiavelli knew, people don't follow you. They follow who you seem to be. They fear, they envy, they dream, and all this makes them manageable. But to govern without sparking rebellion, you must wield power not with open force. Force without wisdom breeds hatred, and the crowd's hatred is dangerous. So you must act differently. You must have strength but not show it crudely. You must inspire fear, but in the form of respect. This leads to the next strategy. If the nature of most people is pliable, envious, and prone to change, neither law nor moral persuasion will keep them in check. Law is just a paper shell, existing only as long as it's backed by strength. When strength vanishes, so does respect for norms, loyalty, and fear of punishment. Machiavelli saw this in every fall of states, every collapse of dynasties, every betrayal of allies. Where there was no strength, law became nothing. But strength isn't in shouting or in cruelty for cruelty's sake. Machiavelli was not a tyrant but an architect of power. He knew true strength is not blood pressure but quiet inevitability. It's when no one dares cross a line, not because you shout, but because you instill an inner sense of limits. It's when you're respected not for words, but for the actions that always follow them. In a world without justice, your safety rests not on how right you seem to others, but on how inconvenient you are to destroy. You can be moral, generous, even kind, but only as long as you have the resources to make your words matter and your actions irreversible. Yet strength must be used artfully. Blind cruelty sparks rebellion. Coarseness ruins the image. Skillful power is always measured. Machiavelli advised using harshness sparingly, sharply, suddenly, but with a clear purpose, so you can build order afterward. Prolonged cruelty breeds disgust, but timely decisiveness earns respect. This isn't just about politics, it's about life. In relationships, business, or society, if you can't set boundaries, if you don't inspire a sense of consequences, you become a target. In an unjust world, kindness doesn't protect you. Your reputation as someone not to be trifled with does. To maintain that reputation, you must not only be strong but be perceived as strong. This brings us back to the image, how you're seen, what the crowd turns you into. To govern, you need not just strength but the ability to shape others' perceptions. The next step is to master not bodies, but minds. You may wield a sword, but if you can't wield attention, you'll lose in the eyes of the majority. In a world where justice exists not as reality but as expectation, that expectation becomes a weapon. People crave a just leader, a virtuous man, an honest boss, a humane ruler, not because these are common, but because it's unbearable to face reality without that image. So, if you want to govern, don't shatter the illusion, control it. Machiavelli knew well, reality can be harsh, but if you cloak it in the right narrative, people will accept even cruelty if it seems just. Even betrayal, if justified by a higher purpose. Even fear, if it comes from someone who outwardly radiates wisdom and care. You can punish if you first speak of protecting order. You can restrict if you preface it with talk of welfare. You can act for your own gain if you convince others it's for the common good. The irony is that people will not only agree, they'll defend you against those who speak the truth. This is the highest form of influence. When you don't prove your rightness but create a context where your actions seem the only right path. You become not a person but a symbol, the ideal others aspire to, unaware that the ideal is a mask hiding intellect, calculation, and a will to survive. But to avoid becoming trapped by this game of expectations, you must remember, everything you show is strategy. Don't believe your own legend. Don't become a hostage to your own image. Let others believe. You must know it's a tool, not your nature. Then you gain power not just over people's actions but over their imagination. This is the most enduring form of dominance. When you don't command but inspire, don't impose but guide. If you control expectations, you become the author of their reality. Yet reality is fickle. Expectations waver. Today's hero may be tomorrow's outcast. To survive, you must adapt, not sporadically, not by whim, but systematically, flexibly, internally. This leads to the next essential principle. Be adaptable, for it's not the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable. If the world is ruled not by truths but by perception, if strength is an image, if justice is a game of expectations, then in this theater, the winner is not the strongest but the one who can change masks without losing face. The one who moves with circumstances, staying a step ahead. The one who, like water, takes the shape of the vessel while retaining their essence. Machiavelli stressed, Those who cling to consistency are doomed. Today you're just, tomorrow resolute. Today gentle, tomorrow ruthless, not because you're a hypocrite, but because reality demands not loyalty to ideals, but loyalty to survival. This isn't self-betrayal. It's the art of being multifaceted without losing your core. In an unjust world, you cannot afford to always be the same. You must be morning sun to some and cold shadow to others. Gentle when it strengthens your power, harsh when power demands fear. The key is not to freeze. Weakness isn't the absence of strength, it's the inability to change. Machiavelli saw how the great fell, not because they lacked a sword, but because they refused to let go of the sword when it was time to speak. They kept playing yesterday's script when the stage had changed. They wanted to stay true to themselves and were swept away by those true to life. Being adaptable doesn't mean being unprincipled. It means being alive. Life, like power, favors those who move faster than chaos, who change before circumstances force them to, who shift tactics not out of fear but out of strength. Such a person, as Machiavelli wrote, becomes not a hostage to fortune but its partner. They dance with unpredictability. They don't curse the storm, they set their sail to its wind. And if fortune favors the adaptable, the one always ready to change becomes its eternal interest. But all this, strength, flexibility, strategy, the mask, why? To survive? Yes. To win? Also yes. But above all, to not break. To not dissolve in the pain and resentment of an unjust world. This is the final truth, the one that closes the circle of reflection, making justice your spur to power, not the cause of your suffering. At the heart of this philosophy lies one simple, harsh choice. What will you do with the injustice you face? Will you turn it into your drama or your engine? Will you suffer from it or rise on it like a ladder? This is not a choice of feelings but of will. The world won't change. It won't become fair because of your pain. It won't apologize. It won't return stolen opportunities, compensate for betrayals, or heal wounds inflicted by others' selfishness, indifference, or greed. Injustice won't vanish, but you can lift your eyes and see, it wasn't punishment, it was a challenge. Machiavelli would say, everything that seems evil can become a source of power if you refuse to be a victim. Betrayed? You've learned who's unworthy of trust. Deprived of opportunity? You're free to find your own. Cast out of the familiar world? It's time to build your own. You don't need to forgive for peace. You don't need to seek revenge for its own sake. You need to use injustice as fuel, pain as motivation, betrayal as a lesson, loss as enlightenment. If you can turn resentment into strength, pain into calculation, loss into movement, you become unbreakable. You stop waiting for the world to right itself. You create your own order. You don't beg, you build. You don't plead, you declare. And paradoxically, this is true justice, not in the world being kind, but in you becoming strong. Not in everyone being honest, but in you knowing how to act when no one is. This is Machiavelli's philosophy, sober, harsh, but liberating. It doesn't comfort, it arms. It doesn't embrace, it equips. If you embrace it, you stop seeking justice. You become someone to be reckoned with, not because you're good, but because you're necessary, inconvenient, indispensable. In a world without justice, you become the law, not for everyone, but for your own life. You're no longer a child soothed by tales of a fair world. You've seen how the honest are deceived, the loyal betrayed, the weak removed, the kind forgotten. You know justice doesn't descend from the sky. It's not built into reality. It's not a law of nature. It's your personal strategy, or its absence. The world doesn't owe you fairness. But you owe yourself honesty. Will you keep suffering, dreaming of the sublime, or start acting, clearly, calculatedly, flexibly, strongly? Waiting is losing. Resenting is wasting time. Hoping is surrendering power to others. Lift your head. Look at the chaos and don't avert your gaze. Where others scream about injustice, build a system. Where others break, stand firm. Where others wait for rules, write your own. Be the one unbroken by disorder, the one who builds a fortress upon it. Be the one who doesn't need justice because you've become stronger than it. And remember, you don't have to be good. You have to be strong. You don't have to be loved. You have to be necessary. You don't have to be right. You have to be a survivor. Act without illusions, without pity, without fear, because the world is not a stage for morality. It's a battlefield of interests. And now you know how to play.